18th, 2025, Prince George's County Board of Education. I am Brandon Jackson, Chairman. This meeting is being interpreted live in Spanish. To listen to the Spanish interpretation, please call 508-924-5155. Again, that's 508-924-5155. We invite you to focus on the screen for the Spanish version of this announcement.
Hay una línea telefónica simultánea disponible para las personas que desean escuchar la reunión de la Junta en español. Si desea escuchar la reunión en español, llame al 508-924-5155.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. For anyone unable to join us live, this meeting is being recorded and will be available later for viewing on the PGCPS YouTube channel. Lastly, for recording purposes, the chairman reminds all board members to ensure that their microphones are turned on when speaking. Ms. Johnson, please take the roll call.
Ms. Ajakaye?
Present.
Dr. Anderful?
Present.
Ms. Boozer-Strother?
Present.
Mr. Briggs?
Present.
Mrs. Brown?
Here.
Ms. Goins-McCants?
Present.
Dr. Moss?
Present.
Mrs. Olivo?
Present.
Ms. Walker?
Present.
Mr. Jackson?
Here.
There are 10.
Thank you. If there is no objection, the September 18th, 2025 meeting agenda will be adopted. There being no objection, the September 18th, 2025 meeting agenda is adopted. Moving on to public comment, the chairman recognizes the speakers for their public comment. To our registered speakers, you are allotted 3 minutes to share your remarks. Speaking time may not be transferred to another individual. The board will not engage in dialogue during this portion of the meeting. Speakers are expected to refrain from using profanity or derogatory language. A warning will be issued once. Continued misconduct may result in the speaker being muted or removed from the meeting. To support a professional and courteous environment, speakers are encouraged to refer to individuals by their titles, such as chair, board member, superintendent, or principal, rather than by name. This evening, the board received 3 public comment requests from individuals who wish to speak in person. There were no written or pre-recorded videos. The chairman encourages those who are not able to speak to submit their comments in writing to testimony@pgcps.org. Again, that's testimony@pgcps.org. Our first speaker tonight is Ms. Rachel Oni, individual, Friendship Aspire.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Good evening. My name is Rachel Oni, and I am a Friendship Aspire parent, and I am coming with gracious frustrations. My child is in the kindergarten class, and that kindergarten class has not had a teacher since they started, a permanent teacher, since they started school on August 26th, which means we have not had consistent communication in either platform. We've emailed, we've tried to connect. I've even made pop-up visits to the school, and Dr. Campbell, who's the principal, has been very helpful and honest with what she can do. And I believe there has just been an opportunity for them to open up a vacancy, which is great. Problem is, my kindergarten child and his peers are now 4 weeks behind his peers in the other 3 kindergarten classes, and it's just unsettling. We're coming from a private school, so obviously there's some differences, and I understand that. What is unacceptable is my child doesn't even have a curriculum to go by. So I understand that we've got different things and different leaderships, and curriculum is handled under someone else and all of those things, but when I ask for what are they learning, I should be able to get something. When I ask him what he's learning, the answers are, I'm watching Bluey. I learned about a Venus flytrap. Not at the end of September. So I'm asking you all to step in and support where you can and help us figure it out. We love PG. It's the reason we moved here from Fairfax County. We love being with our people, and that's important for us. It's important for me to raise my children that way, but I cannot go on this way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oni. Janae Lee, Individual Friendship Aspire Academy. Yes, can we start our time over?
Okay, there we go.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you. Dear members of the school board, I'm here to express urgent concerns regarding class sizes, staffing, and administration at Friendship Aspire STEM Academy. The current situation is unacceptable and reflects a troubling lack of transparency, strategy, and accountability. The average classroom size at Friendship now exceeds far beyond the promised limit of 22 students. As we remain in an open enrollment phase, nearly 40 families have withdrawn their children while new students continue to arrive. We were assured that Friendship Aspire would be located within the South Lake community, yet we find ourselves at Excellence Church with uncertain plans to relocate to the closed Excel Academy and issues with the current investors. Currently, second grade operates with only 3 classrooms instead of 4, and kindergarten has 1 teacherless classroom. Of the 14 teacher positions, only 2 are filled by returning teachers, leaving 86% of staff as unexperienced. This has led to poor instructional quality and reliance on parent volunteers daily for teaching roles, which is unacceptable. One individual is leading this effort, and his actions demonstrate a troubling disregard for parent concerns, suggesting that he feels above Prince George's County. If he isn't listening to us, I do hope that he will listen to you. If these issues persist, we risk significant enrollment decline, jeopardizing our children's education, and potentially violating Prince George's County public school policies and Maryland education regulations. Parents are understandably distressed over the lack of proactive planning. We urge the Office of Public Charter Schools, the Charter Foundation Board, and the Prince George's County Public Schools to take the following immediate action. 1, conduct a random inspection of the school. 2, assess leadership and administration accountability. 3, provide adequate teaching staff, including special educators and counselors, as there are currently no resources for students needing IEP or 504 assessments. 4, ensure proper training and mentorship for all newly hired teachers. And 5, develop a concrete growth plan to address staffing, budget shortages, and long-term needs. I stand before you as one of the voices of a concerned parent within this community, which is fed up. We have exhausted conversations, emails, and calls. This is only the beginning of the school year, and it is unacceptable. Our children, your children, deserve better. I urge you to prioritize their education immediately. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This concludes our public commenters tonight. There were no pre-recorded videos, and there was no written submissions either. Moving on to presentations, the chairman recognizes Dr. Joseph for the review of the preliminary testing data results for MCAP.
Thank you, Chairman Jackson, and members of the board and members of our esteemed community. Tonight, I want to lift up the promise we see in our 2025 MCAP results. While we recognize there is more work ahead, the data reveals meaningful areas of progress that we must both celebrate and build upon. As we interpret these results, it's essential that we compare ourselves not only within Maryland, but also to districts across the nation that serve student populations similar to ours. When we hold ourselves against like peers, we gain a more honest and instructive understanding of how well we're serving our children and where the opportunities for growth lie. We also know that transparency must guide our next steps. This is why we're committed to sharing data more openly with our staff, our families, and our community, and most importantly, acting on it with urgency and precision. Our promise is that this clarity and accountability will bear fruit for us, leading to stronger instructional practices, higher instructional levels of achievement, and a school system where every child is advantaged to reach its fullest potential. I look forward to engaging in this important conversation tonight as we chart the course together. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Doug Strader, and he'll introduce his team, and we'll begin the presentation. Thank you.
So thank you. So good evening, Chair Jackson, Vice Chair Briggs, esteemed members of the board. It's our pleasure to share the results of the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment results from fall and spring of school year 2025. I'm joined here by the Director of Testing, Research, and Evaluation, Dr. Jamie Bowers. She'll be working with us through these slides this evening. So first, to summarize, as we look at our results from the MCAP administration from last year, it's first important to reflect on the change of our student population from year to year, and this just summarizes the students whose data we're about to review. So when you look at this, we had roughly 74,000 test takers this past year. It was an increase of roughly 2.5% from the prior year, additional 1,800 students. But it's important to understand who these students are and how our district is evolving over time. So with that change, you can see we have a 3.3% increase in students with disabilities. As far as economic disadvantage is concerned, we have an increase of over 14.5%, and also a 7.1% increase in our multilingual students. So again, we're going to get into the data. You're going to see many comparisons from the prior year to 25, so school year 24 to 25. So it's important to keep this in mind. Go ahead and advance to the next slide. Thank you. So we're going to walk you through about 6 slides now. I believe about 6 slides of looking at the data, and then we're going to open up for questions after that. So I'll now turn the presentation over to Dr. Bowers, who will walk you through some of the major highlights. Dr. Bowers.
Good evening, board members. Thank you for reviewing the 68 slides that we shared with you with our MCAP results. We wanted to make sure that we provided you a very thorough review of our results from last school year. So our first slide is going to highlight the big picture, or our overall highlights that we want to celebrate for last school year. So Prince George's County did make gains in almost every grade level in English Language Arts, with the exception of grade 4, and that which the state also declined in an equal percentage. We did also make gains across every grade level and course in mathematics last year, as did the state. When we look at our students who are on the cusp of proficiency or just right at the cut point before proficiency, we made some substantial improvements from the prior year. We had just over 20,000 students who were 10 scale score points or less away from proficiency. And when you look at English Language Arts, that was about 13,700, and in mathematics, that was about 77,000. If you look a little further at our students who are about 5 points away from on the cusp, we had about 6,000 students in English Language Arts and about 3,700 in mathematics. Focusing on our 2 student groups that we're focusing on in our big rocks this year, our students with disabilities showed improvement in both English Language Arts and mathematics in every grade level except for grade 6 in reading and mathematics. And our multilingual learners showed improvement in 5 different grade levels and courses, including grade 3, grade 6, grade 7, grade 8, and English 10, as well as every single grade level in mathematics and Algebra 1. The last point we want to highlight is looking at the gains our district made in comparison to the state. So when we look at our gains in mathematics, we had an overall gain of 3.9 percentage points, which actually exceeded the state's gain by about 2 percentage points. When looking at English Language Arts, we had a gain of about 2.8 percentage points overall, which was 1/10 less than the state overall point gain. Now focusing on looking at our student group results, we wanted to show you the slide that is highlighting our students in multilingual learner programs as well as students with disability programs. Over on the left, you'll see we defined what exited means. So if we're talking about multilingual learners, exited refers to those students who have met the growth to target score on the access test and have exited the English language development program. So looking at our English learners, our multilingual learners across the board, the gray, you're going to see our exited students. Across every grade level in English Language Arts, those students who have exited the English language program have outperformed their peers in the yellow, which are our non-multilingual students, and then significantly outperform their peers who are still in the multilingual learner program. Looking at our students with disabilities, exited refers to students who no longer receive specifically designed instruction from an IEP. Again, you see a similar pattern of the students in gray who are exited students with disabilities, who are outperforming their peers in yellow, who are not receiving students with disability services, and significantly outperforming their peers who are still receiving special education services. Moving on to our constructed responses, we wanted to show you a glimpse. Since we did focus on this for our benchmark assessments last year, we also wanted to show you a close comparison to how this looks on the state assessment. So looking at English language arts, we're looking at how many students by grade level scored a 0. On our English language arts, we have two different components. We have a written conventions, we have a written expression, which are represented by the blue and yellow bars. And then we combine that conventions and expressions in the gray. So you can see students in grade 3 overall scored a higher percentage of 0 points, both on the written conventions and the written expression. What that means is on the MCAP assessment, we have 3 items that students are asked to constructed response to from a text. Those written constructed response items are worth between 18 and 20 points apiece, and those are considered our highest percentage of points, and there are 3 of those. So you can see the impact when students are scoring 0s on those 3 items. That is going to significantly impact their overall score, scale score, and performance level on the MCAP. So as you can see, if we move through the grade levels in middle school, that less students are scoring 0s, and our more significant 0 scoring population are our elementary students. One of the things our office has been looking at for about 6 years is our multi-tier student performance. So what that means is we're looking at our student groups by different tiers. So it could be our Hispanic, Latino, multilingual learner students, or our Black, African American, free and reduced students. So we're looking at how are our students doing that fall into multiple student groups, how are they doing in performance in relation to their peers. So while we do continue to lag behind the state's overall performance, but when you take into consideration the uniqueness of our population, we are continuing to perform at the same level or outperform our like peers across the state. So greater than 85% of our students are performing at a level at or higher than their exact peers across the state. I apologize for all of the bullets, but we wanted to make sure to summarize this very important information that you're going to see later in the slides. But we do find that our students who are Black, African American, Hispanic, Latino, multilingual learner, and FARMs outperform their peers statewide in several grades and courses. We also found that our Black African American students outperform their peers across the state in English language arts by 4.3 percentage points and 1.9 percentage points in mathematics. Our Black African American farm students also outperform their peers across the state in all grades in English language arts, with the exception of grade 5, and in mathematics outperform their peers in every single grade level and course across the state. Our Hispanic Latino students outperform their peers as well across the state in English language arts by 1.9 percentage points and 1.2 percentage points in mathematics. Our Hispanic Latino students who are also multilingual learners outperform their peers across the state in several grades. Those were grades 3, 6, 8, and 10. And in mathematics, outperform their peers in every single grade level and course. And lastly, we wanted to focus on our Prince George's County CSI schools, our comprehensive support intervention schools. They are closing gaps at higher rates than other state-identified CSS schools. Many are showing solid progress over a 2-year period, some schools showing gains between 5 and 10 percentage points. We wanted to also focus and celebrate on our schools that are making significant gains. So both our reading and mathematics both doubled in the schools that were considered making gains from the year prior. So in school year 25, 136 of our schools, or 72% of our schools, had a measurable gain, which means 2 percentage points or higher. We also wanted to celebrate 35 of our schools, which had a 5 percentage point or more gain in mathematics, and 6 of our schools had a 10 percentage point or higher gain in mathematics. Similarly, in English language arts, these are 122 of our schools had measurable gains, which was up from 59 the prior year. 38 of those schools had a 5 percentage point gain. 11 of those schools had a 10 percentage point or more gain. Lastly, we also wanted to tell the data story of some of our schools, especially some of our in historically low performing schools that made some significant gains last school year. We wanted to do some empathy interviews and surveys with those principals to see what they attributed some of those gains to. And so the school leaders identified several commonalities, including some strategies, instructional shifts, and innovations that potentially contributed to those higher proficiency rates in mathematics and English language arts. We summarized those in those 5 points. So the first one is they stated that consistent leadership, support through strategic and clear communication, and for targeted use of cohorts and content-based departmentalization was an attributed factor. Secondly, personalized student support through tutoring, small groups, after-school programs, specially designed instruction, student-friendly tools, and tech-based tools. Thirdly, they attributed data-based analysis of formative, local, and state assessment data with year-round training by multiple central office partners. Fourthly, they attributed school culture, climate initiatives, and incentives for teachers, and student collaboration, growth, and stamina. Lastly, they identified educator and paraprofessional content area expertise growth through professional learning opportunities. So at this point, we'll end the presentation portion and open it up for questions on either the slides that we presented or any of the slides that you were able to review in the appendix.
Thank you so much for the presentation. So I will open it up to questions. And I just want to remind board members to be time conscientious. We have 2 minutes and 30 seconds. This is for the question and the response. This is for the question and the response. Thank you so much. So the first person I have tonight is Ms. Robin Brown.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. I really appreciate my 2 minutes and 30 seconds. I wanted to, first of all, say thank you to all the administrators, teachers, janitors, substitute teachers, everyone that touches PGCPS. I think we really need to give you all a hand clap, because hearing these numbers meant a lot for me to hear. And on, can you go to slide 12? Do you mind? That's where my question stemmed from. So slide 12 tells a story, and I know as far as board members are concerned, we have to dispel a lot of myths of, oh, well, that school is like that and that school is like that. Do we have access to these schools so we can speak directly, you know, whether it's our district or other board members' district? I'm curious if we would be able to have that information, or if that information is accessible to the public. Thank you.
As far as access is concerned, I'll defer to the chief of schools. But what I can say is we've worked with some of the schools with the highest gains to solicit their input to see what they viewed as difference from year to year anyway, what may have contributed to this, the contributing factors. So we can share that list with you. But as far as going to see the schools, I'll defer to
Of course you can go see the schools. I'm sure our principals will be happy to share with you some of their stories and what made them successful. As we talk about our schools and what we're doing, I think it's important to actually go into the schools and speak with the leaders, speak with the teachers, and actually see it in action. So definitely going into the schools and seeing it is a great idea for the public, you know, and as well as board members.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily have to go into the schools, but at least have a list so when constituents are speaking about a school, I can, you know, combat that with, hey, well, did you know that this school had gains in this percentage when it came to math and all the different things, just so we can speak to that.
Dr. Strader, can you talk to the dashboards that are coming that might get to that? Yes.
Chair Jackson, 9 seconds?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Go
Okay,
forward.
very
Thank you. I appreciate asking the question. Yes, sir.
All right, very good. So we're about to release dashboards, which will show at a district view and down to the school level, which includes the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment results in there, as well as some other metrics that'll be of interest. One of those metrics will also be, in a complement to MCAP, will include growth and looking at our schools through a growth lens, so you'll be seeing more information on that. But the dashboards also include other metrics such as truancy, suspension rates, enrollment, overall enrollment, demographic information from the school. So you'll be able to access that one-stop shop to drill down to whatever level you'd like.
Thank you. Next up, Amy.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. I want to join Board Member Brown in celebrating some really exciting gains, really incredible work. I did appreciate especially the testimonials and the sharing from the principals who have made some of these gains. I wanted to ask specifically about slide 36. It shows our CSI schools with economically disadvantaged students. I understand they have had measurable gains in math, but it's pretty concerning that, you know, kind of across the board there appears to be almost a 50% disparity in math between the economically disadvantaged and non-disadvantaged. And I wondered if there are plans or techniques or how we can, you know, focus on that group specifically, which seems to have such a high disparity.
I can begin the conversation. So one of the components you see in mathematics, within the economically disadvantaged, a good percentage of those are also our multilingual students.
Okay.
So they do contribute to mathematics. Unlike English language arts, mathematics, they're not excused from the tests for the first couple of years. There is no access equivalent for mathematics. So they do have a significant impact on our mathematics performance. So our programs themselves in supporting multilingual education will also help support the mathematics component of it. But that's just one piece of it. There's other pieces that I can defer to our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. White.
Sure, I would say that actually you hit the nail on the head. Our job is, when we get data, is to really look and break apart all of the subgroups and see where they are. Because we know that our multilingual learners need more, we build out strategies. So in our schools, you've probably heard our staff talk about over the last 3 years, really focusing on ELD key strategies. And so how do you take a plan across every school focused on the same thing so that we can see if those things work? Right now, what we're working on around that is building strong ELD teams in the building and not putting that burden solely on a building principal, but building that staff to wrap around those students. When we look at our stat days and other opportunities to look at data, we are looking at that data and breaking it apart to see how we get them stronger, as well as our special education students, because that is where the disparity lies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Olivo. Also, may I call Dr. Moss?
Thank you so much. Y'all know Jamie Bowers is one of my favorite people, and it's potentially because of slide 4. You know, I asked you about this last year, and I'm going to ask you to do a little bit more math because I think it's going to tell another story for us, in that on the on-cusp students, which is quite alarming and exciting at the same time. Let me say that. implications. But I'm curious if you were able to do any predictive analysis that would say where we might stand in the state had these students shifted. I mean, we got a significant population of students who are right there on the cusp. And then I think the second part of this, and I know that Dr. White's going to tell me, or Dr. Mara's going to tell me that we're doing it now. After each benchmark, are we looking at kids who were on the cusp last year to see if they're moving towards proficiency, and what work are we doing to really move these kids off? So first question is around, can we predict where we may have been in the state had all of these students hit their proficiency target? And then secondly, how's that manifesting in terms of how we talk about data and curriculum in the school each day?
We did not look at the state level, but we can. We can look at, now that we have our state file, we can go back and look. Also, a few slides down, I don't remember which, it shows the analysis of performance levels and how students are moving. So we want to see the shift between performance level 1 and 2 moving to 3 and 4. We did see some really nice shifts in both English language arts and math, a little bit more in English language arts than math. But the pattern overall is that kids are moving out of performance level 1 into 2. We're not seeing as much movement from 2 into 3, and definitely not from 3 into 4, which is the pattern that we want to see.
I know that's your favorite slide. You talk about bubble kids all the time. And so, absolutely, after each benchmark, we actually have time built into the curriculum at all grades to take a moment to stop and look at data. Data-informed instruction allows teachers to know where to move. The area office has been really good about the opportunity to build that through collaborative planning, making sure teachers look at each student. So we could look across our system and say, oh yeah, third grade as a whole. But until you get down to the student level, you can't make changes in a classroom until you know how to group students, how to look at the progressions and move instruction.
Thank you, Dr. White. Moving on to Dr. Anderville.
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Good evening, everyone. Dr. Bowers, the whole team, I know there were a lot of people involved in putting this together. I will also echo everyone's sentiments and just say thank you. This is extremely helpful. I will say one ask that you may or may not be able to grant. This is a very, very thorough deck, a lot of data. While I appreciate it, a table of contents maybe would have helped us kind of, go back and forth. As, again, really appreciate also the summary that you provided. Dr. Moss suggested this as well, but realizing that a lot of the more in-depth data, right, that we need to then access to then kind of corroborate what we've read in the earlier portion of the deck requires us to go back and forth. It would just be helpful, I think. So just minor piece of feedback, but this is fantastic. So I have a quick question. First, I'll just start with my question around ELA proficiency. And so I remember in one of your previous presentations, you also mentioned kind of this exception around grade 4 in terms of us not actually seeing some of what we've seen across the other grade levels. I appreciate, I'm in slides, like I'm around 23 to 25 in the appendix. I appreciate the year-over-year data that you've shown. I think it's really interesting to see that in school year 23, that we're, in a lot of ways, it looks like for school year 25 now, kind of coming back to those numbers, if not exceeding in some areas. So really interested to know kind of what has transpired there. But if you could speak to grade 4 and if there's anything that you can provide, anything that you've uncovered to kind of tell us what's happening there and why we aren't seeing growth. And I know we also have 45 seconds.
So it'll be interesting to look at our benchmark scores this year for our grade 4. Especially our grade 4 students who were grade 4 last year, and then who are now 5th graders this year. So it'll be interesting to look at their writing to see if there's a correlation between the zeros that we saw in our primary grades, looking at did that carry on to our benchmarks this year. We also did more specific look at our multilingual learner and students with disabilities writing scores, so we will also keep that in mind in looking at those grade levels and supporting those students. And Dr. Joseph has made writing one of our key focuses this year, and you can see in our data the need to have that done. And I'll let Dr. White speak too.
Can I have it? You want me to go? Because time is up. Okay.
Please.
Yeah, we're excited about our writing plan. I agree with Jamie. You know, sometimes depending on the test, it could be a question that just threw everyone off. You see that, especially since you see fourth grade across the state. And so when we look at our standard statements and break down our data to see where that is, I agree with her. When we look at benchmarks, we'll look for the same thing. And we'll look at that at fifth grade to see how those students are making progress. In terms of a writing plan, I'm really excited because each quarter we're going to stop across every single grade and give the same writing task and really look at how we're grading and how teachers are doing against the rubric, and really making sure that all of us, from my office, from Carletta's office, down to our coaches and our teachers, really understand that there's opportunities in our curriculum to write every single day, and really highlighting that, and how do we move the entire system, because we're all focused on writing.
Thank you, Dr. White. Next, Board Member Goins-McCants.
Thank you so much, Chair Jackson. And once again, repeated thanks to you all for putting together this presentation. As somebody who does this work every day for a living, I'm always excited to get into the numbers, so I won't do too much tonight because I don't want to be told about time. But please look forward to those emails. One of the things I wanted to get into specifically, because we talked before last time about the zeros, and you brought up a little bit about our writing plans and how you all are addressing that. Do we know what the percentage of students who almost met proficiency also scored zeros on the constructed responses? And if not, could we get those numbers just so that we can see? And then the other question that I had, looking at math, because we can see that we're not doing as well in math, even though there are major gains. Do we know what is happening in those schools that had like those huge growth in math, and what it is that they're doing, if that's something that can be used at other schools, or are they just now, adopting the things that we said, hey, this works, please do this?
Yeah, and I don't want to make anything that I say seem as though schools that did not have gains aren't doing the same thing. Dr. Bauer's office, as well as our Director of Curriculum Instruction, and I myself, we met with principals because we wanted to hear the story. The theme that really raised for me is the policies and procedures that they had in place. The laser focus on looking at student data, going into the classroom, following it through, coming back, pulling out, and finding most of them had intervention time for students and really looked at the data. I think oftentimes we have interventions, but what are we doing with the data? And so I'm sure that there are schools that maybe not have had as many gains, but those are the real highlights. We captured all of that information. Our teams will dissect, and as we begin going out in schools, we'll see what that looks like, where we can lift up, where we can move things, and how we can assist any school that needs assistance in putting some of those policies in place.
And in the last few seconds, when you all do that, can you please highlight for us what policy-wise or budgetary support that they might need to make sure they're able to implement
Sure,
that?
absolutely.
Vice Chair Briggs.
Thank you so much, Chair Jackson, and thank you to Dr. Strader, Dr. Bowser, and of course the entire team for the presentation today. So my question was just around the interventions that were instituted to support students that were at the cusp. I think it's so great that we were able to see students that are almost at proficiency move forward, but is there anything that we can speak to that are best practices that were enacted to get us
Sure,
there?
we're excited about both the literacy policy and the math policy that came out of MSDE. Both of them speak to MTSS. Before we put the name MTSS or RTI to it, our district at one point in time had so many interventions. From a systemic perspective, what we've tried to do at every single grade level is identify a reading and math that moves students through a progression. The reason you want to do that, especially with special education and ELD, is every intervention isn't good for every student. What's going on and where can we target in the specific intervention? I have that list that I can share with you that also lists out when it should show up, how often it should show up, and then our job is to say, we can look at the data behind the scenes. Are schools following that model? And if any of them followed it with fidelity to where the organization said it would grow, did they grow? And that's what we've been doing. So I can share that chart with you, with all of you, so that you can see the ones that we're using.
Thank you so much. The other question was, were the school leaders' gains, so they talked about the research, was that, or they talked about the gains, but was that research-based or was that anecdotal?
Anecdotal.
Okay. Do we have any idea, like, what actually was moving student progress forward, just based on us, doing really great in comparison to the state average?
I would say the area office has actually done a great job. Last year, we were really partners. Over the last 2 years, really just partnering. Like I would say everyone's working, but it's when you work in isolation, it's different than when you come together, when we go out in schools together, when we're at principal meetings, really being in curriculum and helping them follow that through. I would say the monitoring that our instructional directors did in asking the right questions at the schoolhouse. But more importantly, I want to give credit to teachers. Good teaching every single day. I think the more that we can retain, which our human resource department has really worked about retention, is the more we can be consistent in classrooms.
Okay, I wanted to say that's so great, and of course, Dr. Joseph, I would love to, in the 3 minutes, maybe you can finish, but I just want to say, like, if there's some way we could actually get the research or something that backs it up, it would just be great when we think about budget season that's coming up, where do we put dollars, what's working well, what's not, and I'd love for us as a board to start moving in that direction.
Sure.
And I would just add, if I may, Mr. Briggs, there's a difference between research-based and evidence-based. I would argue that we need to focus on evidence-based work, not research, because just because research has been done does not mean that it has an impact. That's why I've been talking about return on investment work, and we're setting up the structures now to do that. Because until we understand until we gain evidence and actually see work, there's a lot of stuff that's research-based that has no impact and has no effect size. And this is where we're transitioning to start looking at growth in a different way. As we start looking at student effect size and start predicting and looking at predictive analyses and things. So it's going to take a little time because we've got to set up the structures to appropriately get those answers. And it's going to take time. So at best at this moment, we'll have the anecdotal. We see the gain, we don't know why, but now we have to lock in and begin looking at the programming, looking at the effect of those programs, and then working that through. But we've not had the time as of yet from this result to really put the research backing in place.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, Dr. Joseph. Can you just clarify, because I know that there's not a lot of people that know the distinction between research-based and evidence-based, what exactly you understand that to be?
Very simply, research-based means I studied it, right? Evidence-based means I understand that because of this thing, we got a result that's positive.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. Board Member Walker.
Absolutely. I don't think the music, the pom-poms, and the marching band was loud enough when you went over these results. These results are freaking spectacular. And I know we had to go very quickly, but I think that the gains are tremendous. One of the things, I don't know if communications is here, but one of the things, Dr. Joseph, I think would be amazing as you continue your the communications campaign is even putting up one stat a day. These are so good that it's tough to tell our story and our narrative, and amongst all things that's happening at schools, it will be tremendous to be able to show these results that the team was able to execute over the last year. So thank you so much. If I could just look at page 8, and I really was hoping, Dr. Bowers, that you could talk to, this is about the 0 score on constructed responses, ELA, and I was just wondering, what are some reasons that you're finding, maybe like the top 2 reasons? I don't know if people didn't understand it or they might be uncomfortable writing. What is that, and then what are we doing now in order to help to improve these scores? Thanks.
So one of the things when we look at zeros are 2 things. Is it because students are not writing at all, or are they writing something that doesn't warrant a score on the rubric? So that's one thing we take apart, the 2 writing pieces. There are a lot of instances where students are writing nothing, so automatically forfeiting the points on the constructive response. One of the things, I had a conversation with one of our performance specialists for our middle schools, and she was out in a few middle schools last week, noticing that when students were working together in cooperative groups, we're having the opportunity to write together in a cooperative group, but didn't see the evidence that students were then going back and independently having the time to write cooperative or write independently on a constructive response. So I don't want to predict that is something, But I think that that was an interesting point that she raised, that are students getting enough independent time in the classroom to write as opposed to working in cooperative groups to write? And I know Dr. White talked about students having the opportunity to write every day and look at those writing tasks. So I'm hopeful that that will give students more opportunity to independently be able to write more often.
I would just add to that, writing just isn't the responsibility of reading language arts. We need to be writing in every content. And we need to be giving students feedback on their writing so that they want to love to write. Like, and it can't be because you did an essay. It could be the smallest of things where we see their thoughts, we hear it, we make them put it to paper, we give feedback on it. We say, how does it get better? And so that's our charge this year, to really work to see how we can do that across every content.
Thank you, Dr. White. I did want to piggyback off of a comment that Superintendent made earlier about return on investment. And I'm just asking to be enlightened about this process because like in the private sector, typically when we have like high performers, when we find them performing high in different departments or segments of the industry, we will get them together as a peer group and talk about, you know, the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities. And Thrash and they'll figure out like how to chart it out on exactly what made them so great, like how did they perform. And then what we would typically do is let them partner with weaker performers, so I say. So do we have a group, because we have, you know, over 200 schools, so the groups that are the schools that are performing at a high level in mathematics specifically, can they get together as a peer group and do they like mentor the not so good performing schools as well? Do we have some type of information exchange like that to kind of help bring up their scores to par as well?
Yeah, I don't believe we have a structure in place right now, and I think it's something, you know, at our last cabinet meeting, we've been talking about issues of scale. Our challenge is we've got pockets of excellence, but we don't have excellence at scale. And right now, we're looking at what are those thresholds, and we know we have to build teacher capacity, but it's expensive. So how do we do it in an efficient way is the charge of our team. We also know we have to move from, you know, going around and observing, you know, going around and giving teachers, you know, checklists and looking at behaviors and doing walkthroughs, and spending more time looking at actually quality of work and being clear about what proficiency looks like on that work, and ensuring that proficiency in one school and proficiency in another school is the same. All right, and so but we've got to build the structures to do that. We're not there yet, but it's what we've been talking about.
Gotcha. Yeah, that sounds like a plan. I'm just thinking, I guess, maybe forward thinking as far as like the return on investment. I feel like we will increase. So if we set up the structures that have good schools performing well in certain areas, I mean, we can multiply the return on investment if we leverage that model and you know, adopt other schools that are performing as well. So I was thinking that we can get more bang for the buck, so to speak, in financial terms. So I want to recognize Board Member Boozer Struthers.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you all for the hard work on the data presentation. So I'm thinking about this in the context of the blueprint for Maryland's future and the investments, and tomorrow this board meets with our state legislators of the Prince George's County delegation, and we have a story to tell. And I wanted to ask if there's some specific feedback on the last 5 to 6 years, you know, for the portion of our Pillar 4 schools that became community schools. We already saw gains in the state, and particularly Prince George's County, in those schools last year, and that's expanded. And then 4 to 5 years for all schools with all of the resources, the blueprint and the MSD visits, like the literacy reviews. What is specifically coming out of the blueprint being implemented at the school level that is impacting this data? Because we do, of course, want to go in front of our legislators tomorrow and make that case.
So I think it goes to what Dr. Joseph said in terms of evidence. We know that I would say one thing coming out is MTSS. That means how we do interventions. We know that's working because right now we're following our interventions through. and checking for fidelity. So that's one pocket of evidence. We know kindergarten readiness is a huge thing. One of the things we did is we went back and we're trying to make our pre-kindergarten curriculum stronger. Why? Because if you have an opportunity to get them before they get to kindergarten, pre-K is our kindergarten readiness. So for every student that's with us all day, they should be getting better, which makes students start kindergarten ready. Also, private providers, we've been really doing a lot to reach out so that we can start making sure that students that come to us that aren't with us are ready. We think about right now the CCR plan. So even when we get students to high school, what's our plan if they're not ready? And then what's our plan when they are ready? So it's a lot of opportunities that we have. Actually going to be talking about our return on investment and what that looks like. And we have metrics for Blueprint that we're going to be talking about. And then what does that mean and how we chase those metrics with clear action steps to get to each one.
And I think we have to remind our legislature tomorrow, there's a difference between proficiency and grade level. That's very important. That's very important because I've seen articles that came out yesterday, for example, that said, oh, the state is spending billions of additional dollars and they're not seeing proficiency. Well, proficiency is a construct that's developed that's higher than growth, that's higher than grade level. So we may have seen grade level growth, but not proficiency, because proficiency is higher than the natural standard. And so it's a superficial argument to say we didn't see proficiency when you didn't look at the growth and see how many more students are on grade level, though not proficient. And until we have that answer, I bet, just common sense tells you put $2 billion in, you're going to see greater content grade level proficiency. Grade level, not where the state has set it. So I wouldn't get discouraged. We just have to look at the data a little more, in more depth and ask the right questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, board member. Moving on to round two. I have Dr. Moss.
Yeah, it's just good to have a superintendent that can speak so deeply about academics and evidence-based research. So I want to say that in the first bit of my time. But for the general public, one of the things I want to, and you didn't say this, Chief Strader, but I think we should add it to our data point. The fact that we had a 14.5% increase in economically disadvantaged students, and we also showed tremendous gains. A 14.5% gain in any population set complicates the narrative, and it makes it difficult to compare baseline from year to year. So if that's complicated to compare baseline from year to year and we saw gains, that means we're doing something wildly amazing to be able to have a 14.5% increase in the number of students who are in poverty and still get academic gains. That is to be celebrated. And so despite gains in economically disadvantaged students, we saw academic gains in reading and math. Now, I'm going to get in trouble with the state superintendent for saying this, but I'm curious to what extent have we pushed back on the state assessment. If you look at fourth grade and you find that across the entire state, all the fourth graders are not doing well, and we're seeing the same pattern across all jurisdictions, there's something wrong with the assessment. And I can say that publicly, and I can say that definitively, because I worked at the Mississippi Department of Education, and the same thing happened. We scored the fourth grade math test wrong, and then when we rescored it with the right the right key, it shifted all outcomes in the state. What I have not heard is dissent across our districts in the state to some of these assessments, because I think there's a scoring issue. If you look across all jurisdictions and you find that all the students are doing bad, when I was a teacher, if they all did bad, my principal would tell me to look at my instruction or look at the design of my assessment. And so I do want us to have a little bit of arrogance about ourselves in our county and start pushing back on these state assessments that come back to look like this, because there may very well be some validity and reliability issues with these assessments. And, in many states, they have a technical advisory council that looks at the assessments every year. And we really need to do that. I know Deanne's shaking her head because she's like, yeah, I used to work there. I used to do this. But I want Prince George's County to push back on some of this. I think we've got enough data. We've probably got internal data to say these kids were trending in the right direction. And then the state comes back and gives us an autopsy that's failed us when it may be their assessment.
Well, Dr. Strader has gotten me on the state Assessment Board.
Okay.
And one of the things I think it's important to remind the public is one measure doesn't
That's right.
predict the success of your child's future. You know, so as we right, yeah. So as we're looking at our state test today, I mean, it's an important measure, but it's one measure, and it's not a measure that predestines anything. And so what we know we must do is look at multiple measures, and bring those multiple measures together to get a good picture of a child's profile. And then ideally, we'll be able to look at that profile, and that profile can be predictive over time with the conglomerate of assessments. So this is one measure. We report out on it because it goes in the paper and it says you're good, you're bad, and so we have to address the public on that. But we also have an obligation as those who know to help explain it in a way that's a little clearer. And ultimately shows that, you know, but be accurate about is your kid making progress or not? Yes or no?
Thank you, Superintendent. Just to follow up with that question, you know, is about one metric, you know, being the end-all be-all for how our population is, I guess, perceived throughout the state. I feel like this is one of the things that I've been arguing about since I got on the board, because I don't think that we as a county realize how much and how important these metrics do us the disservice, shall I say, because when we think about what's always been Prince George's County Achilles has been, you know, direct investment. And one of the variables to get investment into your community is having great schools. You know, public safety and, you know, other transportation, other variables fall into play. But schools, great public schools is one of the biggest variables, is way the heaviest. So when we're constantly getting, our schools are only perceived to be a certain way based on these metrics, it do us a disservice, and it doesn't give us the investment that we need. The investment give us the tax revenue that we need. The tax revenue is what's going to help us with the social programs. The social programs is going to give us money for our schools and our roads and all the things that we need. So it's a cyclical thing. So I guess while I'm going off, I guess what I'm saying is that how can we own our own narrative? Like, how do we reshape that narrative to show, like, if you're a black child growing up in Prince George's County, especially if you're a black male, chances are that you'll have higher social mobility than anywhere else in the state, that you'll learn better here in Prince George's County. Like, there's so many different pockets of information and data that can be exhibited to show the brilliance of Prince George's County. So I just want to know, what are we doing to get that narrative out there to give us a fuller picture of who we are?
Yeah, this is why Dr. Strader is going to show in the next couple weeks that our new platforms that capture what the state has us capture and portrays that accurately, but also shows multiple measures. Will show growth. You know, here's what the national norm for grade level proficiency is, and our kids making adequate growth over time. Yes or no? That's what's more important than those standardized tests. I mean, there are lots of researchers out there that challenge, the notion of standardized tests. We're never going to get rid of them in this country. They serve a sorting purpose. But what we can do is better tell our story, better work closely with our families, ensure that our students are living out their wildest dreams and have plans set forth. And so, that is our work. And I think that's why it's important to have measures as well that go beyond just giving you a score, but compares you. So lets you know what percentile you're in, right? Because I think it's more meaningful for a parent to know that my son reads better than 80% of kids in the country, or worse than 80% of kids in the country, because now I can do something with that information. I know if they're 80% behind, now I've got a sense of urgency about what are we doing to move them forward, because clearly 80% of people are doing better than him. We don't measure in that way, and it's problematic, and it's not useful. Some argue it's destructive. When we start comparing kids by race and things of that nature, we start setting up narratives about groups of children
that are not helpful. And I think there are just better ways to go about that.
Absolutely. Board Member Olivo?
Thank you, Chair Jackson. This is almost a little bit more of a comment than a question, and I'm sure you all have thought about this already, but I just wanted to, I guess, recommend or endorse the idea of marrying our goals of academic achievement with Dr. Joseph's real emphasis on increased community and family engagement. I think what Dr. Strader mentioned about, our multilanguage learner students really made me think a lot about all what I hear, especially from parents for whom English is not their first language, how challenging it is to help their kids with math, for example. And so, especially in our in our elementary schools, perhaps even helping, the departments kind of work together to even design sample family engagement nights that are around math or around writing down and capturing the stories of your family. And so we're bringing the parents in together with the students in those early grade levels to really focus on these two things together, increase community family engagement, and then also work to set our early education students up for better success.
Thank you. Next, I have Board Member Briggs. Vice Chair Briggs. You want to go Ari first? Okay. All right, our student board member. Let's go, Ari.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Just like everybody has said earlier, I first want to thank the teachers, the parents for supporting us students in taking these tests. But I also want to give a huge shout out to the students themselves because I'm a student and it can be very nerve-wracking to take a test, to sit through many hours of test taking, trying to remember everything that your teacher has taught you, trying to remember everything that you have studied in the past. But one question that I did want to ask, in relation to something that was brought up earlier, was about the zero score. And I wanted to ask, what are some steps that you're going to take to encourage students to not leave answers blank? Because we know on the SAT, they say that it's better to put something down than to put nothing at all. So what is something that you're going to look into to make sure that a lot of students are answering more questions on the test?
Yeah, so one of our collective projects I spoke about is the writing plan. So oftentimes we give a benchmark, which you said is and they take it and then you don't realize until afterwards they have the zero. And so us taking an opportunity, a moment every quarter at every grade to stop, have a particular writing that we do across the system in that grade, and then teachers are scoring it against the rubric, having conversations. Now I can have this direct conversation because I know you didn't write. So let's talk about what that barrier is and how I can assist you. Then that gets all of us to see where we need to support schools and how we can go in and help teachers that are struggling with figuring out whether that's through centers or just different opportunities that we put in place for them. So I think it's the intentionality. Oftentimes we have a lot of things and we don't monitor what we have. So I think it's the monitoring and intentionality.
Vice Chair Briggs.
Okay, thank you so much, Chair Jackson. I just have one more question, because I know that in Prince George's County, we have a significant multilingual, or at least disproportionately to other counties in the state, a larger population of multilingual learners. So are we infusing any more resources into instructional interventions for multilingual learners, English language learners, whatever term you want to use?
Yeah, we actually have specific, for example, Speak Agent, we do a lot for mathematics in middle school. It's a partnership we have with the math office in ELD. Board Member Olivo talked about families. We actually, by state, the state had every LEA make sure that we have a family engagement specifically for those families to make sure that they're involved. But we built a whole platform to look at their data because we wanted to look at them differently and break it apart. So we're trying to be very strategic in how we are examining ELD and special education and not just lumping them with the whole. And so that's again, that whole intentionality on they're not the same. And so what do you do and what do you build and what do you put your funds to that can help us dig a little deeper in both of those populations?
Thank you.
I don't see any more lights at the moment. Is there any more questions? Okay. All right, Board Member Goins-McCants.
Thank you so much, Chair Jackson. So my question is part statement, part question, and part request. So in looking at this deck, we have a lot of conversation around proficiency. Obviously, we just got an assessment. Not a lot of conversation around what are our students doing who are scoring at level 1 and level 2 are they moving? And we talked a lot about colloquially bubble kids, but specifically, how are we as a district doing on moving our students out of level 1 to level 2, especially considering that academic progress is such a big part of the report cards. And I don't know about my fellow board members, but a lot of my constituents are always asking me about, is this school a better school than this school? And we know there's so many things that go into school ratings. And one of the biggest things I'm always talking to them about and telling them to look at is specifically looking at what is the demographic in that building. Look at what's coming home with your child. Look at how your child specifically is growing, and to some of the questions about how we're telling our story. What is it that we're doing to let people know how much work we are doing? Like, for example, the fact that we have so few students in ELA in Prince George's County, and obviously this wasn't in your presentation, in level 1. And that is a huge thing to celebrate, especially considering how many special education students we have, how many English language learner students we have compared to the rest of the state. But then looking at that on the flip side in math specifically, and my question about where we see great gains, what is working, what is happening where we're seeing great gains in proficiency that can be used, and are we looking at something where people are using strategies that work well for students who are on the bubble and not well for students who are further behind? Or what is happening in terms of how people are doing things in buildings, especially since we know we have amazing educators and wonderful school leaders? How are we supporting them to make sure that they are getting the results that are proportionate to the effort that they are putting in, and we know they're putting in every day?
So one of the things we've been doing, very focused professional development with the principals first. So like today, this week was our first week of principal meetings at the levels and focused around our big rocks. And that's been continuation over the years. And so within that, we're working directly with the principals and the assistant principals at various levels to ensure that they have the content knowledge first to actually go down to the school level. And then as it relates to what's happening in the buildings, we're beginning to ask the question to gain the evidence to see, and then we're going into the schools to actually see it. And so we've also built some teams. When we talk about our CSI schools, we built teams to specifically work with them around the subgroups where they needed support. And so that's helped to build our teachers as well as our school leaders in what they were able to do, and we see the progress.
The other thing I would just add to that is we're trying to build pockets of excellence in certain schools where we are creating the conditions. And then because we're creating the conditions, how do you then get other teachers to be a model for teachers to come through and see it? And not just you showed up and you saw it, but you came through, we talked through the curriculum, you understood why they planned, you were able to point out what did you see, how did the teacher make the move, why was that important? You break up apart afterwards, and then you provide opportunities for them to learn how to do lessons. And I think if we can get to that innovative space, which we started in middle school mathematics, this year we're going to be piloting that in elementary into schools in reading. I think you build that kind of model, it goes to how do you get to the core of teachers, and we build pockets of those excellence so that every school can get better.
Thank you so much. Before we conclude the presentations, I just wanted to, applaud the staff and the teachers and everybody who put the hard work into making sure that we get these types of scores. And also, thank you for pulling together a great presentation. This was probably one of the best presentations we had in a long time. So I want to say thank you so much. And now, I would like to, we want to thank you all for joining for tonight's meeting. To our online viewers, thank you for watching. There being no further business, the time is now 6:20. The September 18th, 2025 Prince George's County Board of Education meeting is adjourned. Good night.